Luke chapter 5, verses 1 to 11. I remember the occasion well. Jesus was standing beside the lake of Gennesaret with a crowd of people pushing and shoving in an effort to get closer so that they could hear what he was saying. Two of us had fishing boats there at the shore, and some of the guys who'd been out fishing through the night were busy washing their nets. Well, the next minute, Jesus climbed into my boat and he asked me to row out a little from the shore so that he could teach from there without being pushed and shoved by the crowd of people. I did so, but to be honest, I was wishing that he would dismiss the crowds so that we could have some peace. Some of us had been fishing all night and we were really bushed. The fact that we had caught nothing despite our endeavours didn't make for a cheerful mood. Anyway, as so often happened, I did what Jesus wanted and tried to hide my true feelings. And when we'd pushed out a little from the shore, Jesus sat down in the boat and he taught from there. And as usual, the crowd was enthralled by what Jesus was saying. And despite the fact that I was battling to keep my eyes open, I also found that what Jesus had to say, as always, was spellbinding. It was just so amazing to hear these different insights into God and God's word and God's will, and he just made everything so fresh. It sounded so different. It sounded as though we were hearing it for the first time. Anyway, finally, Jesus finished what he wanted to say, and it looked as though we were going to have some time to just chill. Not so. Jesus suggested that we move out into deep waters and that we drop our nets for a catch. Didn't he realize how exhausted we were? And he could see that the boat was empty. There was no sign of any fish. It was obvious that we'd had a night of profitless toil. And some of us hadn't tried really hard to stifle our yawns and to indicate that we'd really had enough. I tried to hide my irritation. Master, we have fished the whole night through and caught absolutely nothing. I wanted to say, what makes you think it's going to be any different this time if we do push out into deeper water and lower our nets? What makes you think that we're going to be any more lucky than we were for the whole of the night? But anyway, I bit my tongue. You might not believe this, but I quite often wanted to say things and didn't say them. There were other times when I said stuff and quite often regretted it. But anyway, I kept my slight irritation to myself. And I said instead, if you say so, I'll do what you suggest. And so we did. We put out into deeper water and we let down our nets. In a matter of minutes, our nets were so full that we were straining and we were scared that they were going to break. And so we called to our partners, James and John, to come and assist us. And they did. They came with their boat, and soon both boats were so full of fish that they began to sink. We were all amazed. I felt bad that I had been secretly annoyed and regarded this exercise with such skepticism. Somehow Jesus always caught me off guard. I felt so confused, with such a powerful sense of my unworthiness, that I fell at Jesus' knees and I blurted out, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." It wasn't as though Jesus had deliberately tried to expose me and my weakness and my irritation and my lack of faith and so on. Jesus wouldn't have done that, but I can't explain how awkward I felt sometimes. I was just overwhelmed in the presence of Jesus, especially when he did these remarkable things. I was overwhelmed, and I felt that I didn't belong with him and in his presence. He could have found someone better. I wasn't worthy of being his disciple and in fact even his friend. He surprised us continually. We never knew what an occasion would turn into. We never knew how incidents would end. We never knew what strange things Jesus was going to say next that seemed to contradict all we had been taught. There were other occasions too. I remember that occasion when there was that ferocious storm and we were out on the lake and we were caught in the middle of that storm. It seemed like the boat was going to capsize and we were all going to drown. Somehow Jesus was oblivious of all of this and he was asleep in the stern of the boat, and we had to wake him up. "Master, don't you care if we drown?" He had been in a sound sleep and not aware, it seems, of our imminent danger and the fact that any moment the boat could capsize and we'd all drown. Anyway, we woke him up. Jesus, on that occasion, stood up and he rebuked the wind and waves. I mean, who ever heard of such a thing? Somebody speaking to the wind and the waves directly, with such authority, and having such incredible results. Immediately, the storm calmed down. And this was another of the incidents when I was very conscious of being in the presence of someone great, someone holy, someone so much better than me. And there was that other occasion when he wanted to wash my feet. I guess you all know that story. And I hadn't worked out how I was going to react, but when Jesus came to me, I protested because I felt so awkward. I felt that this was so unfitting for Jesus to do, and it seemed to expose my own inadequacies and my concerns about being important, though I knew deep down I really felt a fake. But like the rest of the disciples, we all wanted to have a good reputation. We wanted to do things and say things that made us seem important. Anyway, on that occasion when He wanted to wash my feet and I protested. In the end, I had to accept what he was doing. He seemed to indicate that unless I was ready to allow him to wash my feet, then we could have no future together, no fellowship, that I could not benefit from being in his company. And I couldn't bear to think of that happening, of Jesus cutting me off, or my doing something that would make me somehow unacceptable to him and beyond his reach. You might regard me as impetuous and full of bravado, but I can tell you that secretly I lacked confidence. I was so afraid that Jesus might decide he was wasting his time with me. I don't even want to talk about the time when I declared publicly 3 times that I didn't know him. I used language that I'm ashamed of, and I was so humiliated by my utterances, and afterwards I was so disgusted with myself. And when I heard what Judas had done after he had betrayed Jesus, I was quite envious of Judas and thought that if I'd had the courage, I would have gone out and ended my life too. I couldn't see any future. I couldn't see how I could wipe the slate clean. I couldn't see how I could be forgiven for disowning Jesus in such a disgusting way. But despite how raw I felt then and how raw I still feel when I think about it, I became convinced that Jesus did forgive me. And that's the wonderful thing. I knew that Jesus had seen me at my worst, and I know that Jesus had seen me sometimes, or heard me, at my best. That time when I declared that he was the Son of God. I surprised myself because I didn't realize I had it in me to make such a wonderful and profound utterance of the truth, and Jesus was obviously thrilled by that. Anyway, he'd seen me at my best, and he'd seen me at my worst. And still, he took pains to convince me that it was okay, and that he accepted me, and that he forgave me, and he convinced me that he saw something in me that I had never been able to see in myself. Well, I've got a bit carried away. Back to that fishing expedition, because I haven't quite finished it. We were all amazed. We had never experienced anything like this. What did it mean? Did Jesus somehow see a huge shoal of fish in the deep water? Or did he instinctively know that we would make an unprecedented catch if we put out into deep water on that occasion? Was Jesus divinely inspired to issue such an instruction? And what did it mean when he said that from then on I would catch people? I'd love to be able to say that from that moment on we were more ready to accept strange and wonderful things when we were in the presence of Jesus for those 3 wonderful years. But always we were taken by surprise. Jesus seemed to say to me personally, from now on you will be catching people. He said, don't be afraid. And I suppose it was fear that caused me to fall on my knees at the feet of Jesus and feel so unworthy. I suppose it was fear, because as I've said, those incidents seemed to expose me. I guess we all felt like that. They exposed us. We were aware of our doubts and our fears and our hesitation and our lack of conviction and so on. For ages I mulled over this. From now on you will catch people. How does one catch people? And what does it mean to catch people? Now, of course, the years have rolled by and I can look back over my life and I can see that somehow people have been drawn to this man and to God through me. How amazing is that? I am thrilled when I think about it. But that doesn't mean the nagging self-doubt has gone forever. I know the best about me and I know the worst. And some days I'm happy with what I say and do and how I behave and perhaps how I come across to others. And there are other times that I just hope people don't see the real me. Though I've changed significantly, there's still a lot of stuff deep inside. And I'm not super confident, even though you might hear stories about Peter the fisherman and the wonderful way in which this man, Peter, stood up and addressed a crowd of 3,000 people. That was after Pentecost, and the result of that was that all these people came to believe in Jesus. You hear those stories, but no, there always is another side to all of us. And I know my own weakness, and I have to trust Jesus, and I have to trust God, and I have to go on hoping and believing. It's all okay. Certainly, that fishing incident had a profound effect on all of us. We rowed back to shore. We jumped out of our boats. We dumped everything. And we followed Jesus. That was a defining moment in our lives. Somehow, though we were and still are a motley crew, Jesus was convinced we had something to offer. He opened our eyes to our potential. All of us are extremely grateful. And I sometimes think, imagine if I had said no when Jesus said, cast out into deep water and put down your nets for a catch. Imagine if I'd said, look, Master, I don't want to be disrespectful. I hear what you're saying, but I'm really tired. I do want to get home to my wife and family. It's been a long night, and you've been talking to these people for so long. I'm really bushed. Imagine if I had said that. So I am grateful that I played it right. Jesus opened our eyes to our potential. He seemed to see into us. And of course, he referred to me as the rock and said that on this rock he would build his church. Another thing that was mystifying. Rock? I felt nothing like a rock. I guess it's always better to obey the promptings of Jesus, the promptings of God, even if they seem to be foolish. If he says put out into deep water, take some risks, push yourself, use your reserves, do what seems to be a waste of time, I guess it's always better to do what you think he's nudging you towards. You never know how it's going to turn out. When all is said and done, I have to say, my life has turned out well because of that man.